Hi guys, and welcome to this week's vlog. Now, I'm back at one of my favourite spots to do some shots, which is Blackpool. And the reason why I'm here is because I'm actually going to replicate a shot I took probably about 7 or 8 months ago now. But the reason why I'm here replicating this shot is simply this. The images I take when I'm generally at the seaside or of seascapes, I tend to use a long shutter speed. I just personally like that smoothed out sea. But when I smooth out the sea, I tend not to like the blurriness of the sky. In other words, I'm not saying that I don't like the blurriness of the sky 100%, but more often than not, I tend not to like the blurriness of the sky. So what I tend to do is I tend to swap them over. So in other words, I'll take 2 shots, one with a faster shutter speed to freeze the detail in the sky and all that cloud information, and then I'll simply combine them both in Photoshop afterwards. And because I do that, and because I tend to do that quite often, lots of people are asking me in the comments, can I please make a tutorial on how I do that? Simple as that. So that's what this vlog is all about. Let me very quickly talk you through my setup then. So the first shot I'm going to take is a shot using these the wave breakers as a leading line going out to the pier in the background, and these are my current settings. I'm going to get washed away. No, I'm going to get splashed. These are my current settings. I'm at f16. I'm at ISO 50. I want to really desensitize that sensor to enable me to shoot with a long shutter speed. Then with my 10-stop filter on there, I've managed to achieve a 2-minute exposure. I've got a 0.9 soft grad on the top there. It's a soft grad just to try and bring some more of that detail down in the sky. And really, that's it. I'm going to let the camera do its thing over a 2-minute period. So you know over 2 minutes, I'm going to get a really flat water. But if you look at the sky, in actual fact, if you take a look at this image now, if you look at the sky that I've got, and I will say this over and over again, it's very subjective. If you like it, if you like the blurry sky, and sometimes I do as well, then that's perfectly fine. But more often than not, like I said earlier, I'm not really a fan. So I'm going to let this 2-minute exposure play out, and then I'm going to reset my camera and take a faster exposure shot to bring the detail and freeze that detail down in the sky. And then it's a case of taking it into Photoshop and post-process it. Okay, so now we've put these pictures into Photoshop, I'm going to show you how I basically swap the skies over. I'll show you 3 different shots that I actually took on the day, but the shot in the video, that's not the one I'm going to show you in terms of swapping the sky, because that's too easy. I found another one that there's another element to it that makes it slightly more complicated, but only very slightly more. But if I show you that one, then you'll benefit more from it. So first of all, let's just take a look at the 3 images. So that's the first one that I actually took, and if you see the before and the after, now of course you're going to have to titivate that shot quite a bit, but if you look at the before and the after there, you can simply see the intention is to keep the smooth sea, but that blurry sky there I'm not keen on, so we're just going to swap it with that sky there. I did the same again a little bit later on, and this works very well. In my honest opinion, I like this an awful lot. So once again, that's the blurry sky that I don't like, and replace it with the actual sky on the night. I don't see this as a composite picture because I'm not using a false sky. I'm actually using the actual sky that was there. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not really a composite picture, but again, it's all subjective, and I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that you have to like it. It's entirely up to you. But that's what I prefer to do. Sometimes I like the blurry sky, but more often than not, I want more detail in that sky. And the third one, which we're going to concentrate on, is this particular one here. And so you can see that's the shot I took of the pier. And that's a nice long exposure shot there as well. We had to wait for ages for that wheel to start turning. But over, I think, a 2 minute exposure, we captured that quite nicely. And that's the shot with the actual sky in there. And if I just do that there, okay. So that's the original shot, and that's the long exposure smoothing that sea out. Now, I actually like this particular picture as it stands, even though it's not a smoothed out sea. I think that 4 or 5 second exposure there is just enough to capture some drama in that sea. However, well, I'm going to use this particular picture as or for our demonstration purposes, simply because there's an element of it's a little bit more complicated to do, but the whole process is actually very easy to do. So let's go for it then. Let's start from fresh. Let's head into Bridge and grab these two pictures, if I can find them. Where are they? Okay, so they're these two here. Okay, so both of these pictures have opened up in ACR. I've already made a few adjustments, but the adjustments are just very basic adjustments. There's nothing very special in there. The video I did before that, which included Mary Shell, then I actually took my time in Photoshop to show you how I made the very same adjustment. So if you're not sure about or making adjustments to your raw pictures, whether it's in ACR, which is Adobe Camera Raw, or Lightroom, then check that video out. But I'm just going to rush straight ahead and open these images up in Photoshop so we can concentrate on what today's video is, which is about removing the sky or swapping the sky. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to grab the sky and I'm going to overlap it onto the picture that I'm going to use as the sea. So let's just double click this one just so I know where I am. Call that the sky. On the background one there, we're simply going to call that the sea. So now we know exactly where we are. So if I turn that on and off, you can simply see that's the one we're going to use for the sky, and the bottom one is the one we're going to use for the sea with the long exposure. Okay, so the first thing I need to do now then is highlight both of these. You simply do that by clicking on one layer, pressing and holding the control button, which adds or removes to your selection by clicking your mouse button. So if I click the bottom layer, that's now added both layers. I'm now going to come up into Edit and Auto Align Layers. Click on that, just leave it on auto, everything will be perfectly fine. And there you go. So now that's the images, in theory, aligned. Sometimes you might have to fine tune this, but if I just switch the top layer on and off, you can see that's done a fairly decent job. Okay, so I quite like that. Okay, so all I'm going to do now then is click on the top layer, which is the sky, and I'm going to simply grab my selection tool, my polygon lasso tool. I'm going to make sure I'm right on that horizon. Make sure you're right on that horizon. Now you can zoom in, of course, and take your time and get this absolutely spot on. And I'm just simply going to follow that horizon all the way along to there, down, down, down. There you go, like so. And I'm going to click on layer mask. I'm just going to give it a vector mask. What's actually happened now is I've removed the sky, so in essence it's the wrong way around. So all I'm going to do with my layer mask selected is simply invert it. Once I've inverted it, what it'll actually do now, it'll actually cut the sea out and not cut the sky out. So it's very, very simple. It's a good little tip that, by the way. Every time you press Control and I, whatever color you're on, it'll automatically take you to the opposite color. Now, as you know, or probably know, layer masks work with black and white. So if you simply want to invert white, it turns to black and so on and so forth. So it's dead easy. So now instantly you can see, apart from fine tuning, that's all I need to do. Now I can zoom in here and have a look, and all that looks perfectly fine. Okay, and the only time it gets a little bit odd is around about here. And all I'm going to do here, obviously still selecting my layer mask, hit B for brush. Let's select a fairly large brush. Let's make sure it's a very soft brush. I'm going to come up to my opacity. I'm going to click on, let's say, 40%. And I'm just simply going to paint it and just blend that in. Just blend it in. There you go. Okay, really, really easy. I don't need to do anything any more than that. And that, in essence, is the sky swapped over, or the sea swapped over. Doesn't really matter, it's 50-50 pretty much in this instance. Now, the reason why I've chosen this image, because in the sky, it's the faster shutter speed. And with the faster shutter speed, the wheel that was revolving is pretty much frozen the wheel. The image underneath has that lovely slow shutter speed where the wheel is actually it's moving in the frame, and it looks so much nicer. So all I'm now going to do is actually use the blurry part of the wheel and add it also into the sky. So this is why I chose this image, and all I'm going to do for this is in exactly the same way. I'm going to make sure black is selected because it's the opposite, but this time I'm going to choose a large brush and I'm going to make sure it's a hard brush. Now the shortcuts for that, by the way, is my square brackets on the keyboard. So square brackets to the right will make the brush bigger, square brackets to the left will make the brush smaller, and if you hold your shift button down, the same two square brackets will make it harder or softer. So in this instance, working on the fly, I'm going to choose a large brush and I'm going to choose a hard brush, and I'm going to try and, the best I can, click, make sure I'm on 100%. Let's go right up to the edge of that wheel. There you go. That looks a lot better. Yeah, so lots of times it's trial and error. There you go. I like that. That's good. Okay. Now, if you look at these messy parts here, these messy parts are where the image didn't quite line up, or it's from a messy part of the sky. Again, that's not really a problem. Same as here as well, you can see on the edge here. So first of all, let's go back to just tidying this up. And I am rushing, so you can take your time when you do it, but as you can see, even rushing, we do a pretty decent job. Okay, so now all I'm going to do here, just to tidy these small bits up here, is I'm going to select my clone stamp, and I'm just going to go around the edge there and just make that nice and neat. Nothing any more complicated than that. Okay, so before I do that, I now need a new layer. And what I do if I want a new layer, because the top layer at the moment, if I simply press Ctrl and J or duplicated that layer, all I'm going to do is actually duplicate whatever effect I had on the top layer. So this is only how I work. How I do it is I use the shortcut Ctrl Alt Shift and E, and what Ctrl Alt Shift and E does, it creates me a fresh layer. It's almost like a snapshot of where I am. It's almost like merge visible, but of course it keeps the history, so the two layers underneath intact. So there you go. So now I've got a fresh layer. I can simply press S or come across to this icon here, which is my clone stamp. And all I'm going to do is hold down Alt, select the area close by, okay, and I'm just going to tidy this up. And you can really take your time with this. Remember, at this present moment in time, I'm really zoomed in. Make sure I'm on 100% there as well. When you work with a clone stamp, my suggestion to you is always work in lines. So you can see you've got a line coming across here. So just follow that line all the way in. Come all the way up. There's a few bits there. Don't really need to do that, but certainly these bits here. So let's grab that there. Come across, make that a bit bigger so I can rush it all the way up around there. Follow that round, really take your time, and I can really get in here. There you go, nice and simple. I'll probably speed that up just a little bit more in the edit, just so it's not so boring. Okay, there you go. Now, like I said, you can take your time with that and get that absolutely spot on. Get down to some real fine detail. And I'm going to grab my patch tool, just go across these areas here, drag it across, and that'll just balance that light out just a bit more and make it look a lot more natural. And there you go. And that's selected there, so make sure you press Control and D to deselect it. Control and 0, let's go full screen, so you can see we were really titivating that image. So in this particular image now, what we've got is we've got the long exposure sea, the fast exposure sky, but I've also included the long exposure wheel that goes into the sky as well. So this is a little bit more complicated than an ordinary picture. But with an ordinary picture like the first one I showed you earlier, this one here, this is quite literally grabbing the first shot, which is the sea, grabbing the sky on there and drawing a line across the horizon and then dividing one to the other, and then just simply clean it up using a layer mask. And of course, just to finish that image off there, once again, I'm going to press Control Alt Shift and E to flatten the layer on top, keeping the history intact. Again, don't comment, because there's lots of ways of actually doing this, lots of ways of working in terms of a workflow within Photoshop. This is just the way I've always done it. So with that top layer selected, I'm going to press Control and T. I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt, and that maintains the ratio, and I'm simply going to open that picture up, hit enter, and voila. So I can clean spots up, I can do whatever I want with that image, but there you go, that's it. It's as simple as that. What we're looking at now is, like I say, is a long exposure shot with a sea and a fast exposure shot with the sky. It's not to everybody's liking, and sometimes even I don't like it, but more often than not I do. But there you go, that concludes this video on how I swap my skies over. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed that. If you have, give me a thumbs up and subscribe and all the rest of it.